Hey, welcome back, everyone. This is Key of W.
And me, Empfindsamer.
Yep, here we are with more Saints of Virtue. We're on level 4 of 4. This is it. This is the final level. This level is called the Domain of the Heart. If you missed the title crawl, which was actually in the previous video, the final area, our goal is to make it to the Temple of our Heart. So yeah, we have a bit of a thing going on here. Let's just jump right in. Swamps of
Not gonna lie, Domain of the
Selfishness.
Heart. Domain of the Heart sounds like a Peter Gabriel album or something.
It absolutely does. Um, so, the thing about this level that I know is that it is almost entirely linear. There's one forced backtracking at minimum, and it's not that much. Actually, you know what? Let me get out the big guns. There are no new enemies in this level. It's just 4 of the 6 we've seen before. So, yeah, there's that. Um, so, what do you think of this Swamps of Selfishness here?
I mean, I don't know why, but the first thing that this made me think of was the Chaco Mountain track from Mario Kart 64.
All right, I can see that.
With the little mud puddles. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, not much to say so far.
Yeah.
Sort of disappointing there's only repeated enemies, but
Yeah,
it's probably okay. I wonder if it was a conscious choice or they were just saving time.
I wonder. Oh, that's an interesting.
What's going on?
Yeah, I was watching the
Yeah,
texture here because I just assumed it was a constant one direction motion. It actually moves in a square pattern, which is how they get it to be constantly moving without having to create too much animation, I guess. The thing with this is quicksand. If I step in, I'm going to start to sink. And if I am in the zone too long, I'll sink far enough that I will just die. Um, and this is one of the things that made the game impossible on computers that were too powerful because the sinking rate is affected by the frame rate. And so if you play this game on a good computer, you'll step in, drop like a stone to the bottom, and that's it. So I'm going to try to
you touch, you die.
Yeah.
Great.
So I might do some extra saving here and there. When I played the game, what I remember doing is jumping on top of these walls because it's possible. The way the game is coded, that you could jump to the height of the world map, which was very dependent on what room you're in. And this one, the height was a little higher than these walls. And so you'd walk past because it would be impossible to do what I'm doing now. Of course, I could just strafe run and get through that much quicker.
Yeah, I think I vaguely remember that. But I can't remember how we found that out. Is it just you jump and you can jump that high?
Yeah, we just were able to jump high, so we just thought it was intended, like the developers were cool with it. But it was entirely, I wouldn't say a bug because the programming wasn't going wrong. That was just how it's programmed. But how would the developers have known that as computers got faster, the game wouldn't work? I don't know.
Like, it makes me wonder, like, what were they designing it on? Because I don't think we got it that much later than its release date, did we? And maybe I'm
No.
misremembering.
We got it maybe a year or two after the release date. I don't remember exactly, but I do remember us. It was at best early 2000s. I remember playing it on our shared computer in the bedroom when we were both in the same room, and there was one computer, and we actually ran out of storage space on it because those are the days where 2 or 3 good games would do that. So anyway, we picked up one scroll. We do need this one, so we do have to do that scroll. Let me just cross this again. Strafe running is really the only way to do that. Yeah, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the Swamps of Selfishness. I feel about this level about the same way that I do about level 2. I think I said about 5 times in that sentence. In that it is thematically pretty much on point to me, but from a game design perspective, then it kind of falters in a couple of areas.
Well, I guess what's the theming here, right? Swamps of Selfishness, right? Is the idea that there's these, because I've noticed they've done this a couple of times where there's items on the other sides of these swamps.
Mm-hmm.
The idea, like, oh, because it almost seems more like greed than selfishness. Like, oh, like the idea that you could die chasing after these treasures or whatever. But I'm not sure I'm understanding where selfishness specifically comes in just yet.
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit more just kind of a take our word for it kind of thing, where there's not as much direct obvious this is what we mean by selfishness. Uh, what I think is more likely to be the meaning is to think about selfishness as something that drags you down, something that ends up being sort of disgusting and uh, not beautiful. Although, if you know anything about swamps, this is not really what swamps look like. Swamps are actually quite full of life and vibrant, but I guess for the alliteration, we go for the word swamp. It's more just
Yeah.
like a mud bog.
The Bayou of Belligerence.
Yeah, so I think of it almost like dead marshes type of swamp, where the idea is
Yeah.
it's got mud and water and stuff, but it's death. There really isn't a lot of life, except for these bushes here for some reason. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going for more like the swamp of oh gosh, what is the swamp where the horse drowns in the
Swamps of
never-ending story?
Sadness. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they're going for.
Yeah, it's that kind
Not
of thing.
quite as traumatizing, at least not so far.
Yeah. The noise you're hearing now is the poison pond. So there is a scroll we need over there, but we cannot get. Actually, I can get over there. It's just I won't survive the trip back. If I step in here, I start taking damage. And again, on newer computers, you would lose health at such a rate that it was impossible to make it across. Just take this. So the trick that we did was, and I say we, I remember I did this. Who knows if you did it? Is I jumped on top of the wall. I'd walk all the way over there, and then I'd jump off the wall from there and get onto that island from there. So I would take relatively little damage, and then I could cross here. But there still is an item you need to be able to do even that. We can't jump up there anymore, so I can't do the cheaty method. We'll have to use the item that's intended, so this is the one backtracking moment in the level. And
Yeah, I think I remember that. I think I remember having to climb up there
Yeah.
and jump down. And the thing is, at the time, we had no idea that wasn't just the intended way to do it, because we didn't know that what
Yeah.
we were seeing was a programming error, so to speak.
yeah. It
Or like
happened
an
in a
error,
lot of
just
Yeah. I seem to remember a lot of games that were essentially not professionally produced, right? Like a game that was created by, people just kind of making a thing on older computers. It just wouldn't occur to them to make sure you either cap your frame rate or you don't design very important things based on how fast the computer is going, right? Like the frame rate shouldn't be capped to the computer clock speed, because we would get these old indie computer games that wouldn't run on modern hardware because it would be 10 times too fast.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, early on, it probably just didn't occur that the speed at which computers would develop would be so rapid. You might say, sure, you could have maybe anticipated that eventually it would start to impact your game, but I think people really just thought computers were a thing that were going to be the same thing they always were for a lot longer.
Yep, that's how it goes. So these trees, you notice they have some interesting looking branches. One of these, oh, it's all the way over here. One of these has an extra branch. This is a secret lever.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Hello, we don't need any of this. Because of the route that I've taken, I've already picked up a lot of power-ups before we got here. But hey, there's extra power-ups if you need it. There's also the ammo for the launcher, which I do plan to use in like 1 or 2 spots toward the end of the game, but otherwise it's not that useful. Yeah, there's a sense of like, I don't really blame developers for not catching the march of time, not catching the concept of computers going too fast in the future. So I'm not going to sit here and go, wow, these developers are terrible. They did the best with what they knew. It came back to bite them almost immediately, because it was a very short time after the game was made that it became unbeatable. Without
I always find that
cheating.
that type of stuff kind of interesting. It's always fun to look back at a game. Oh, here's how a limitation of the time or an expectation of the time really doesn't line up with looking back at it.
And it's PC only.
Posterity.
Yeah, arcades of course didn't do this. Consoles didn't, because consoles were locked already. Games that were on consoles, who you developed for, the console wasn't about to suddenly get more powerful. It was just PCs that would do that. And so only PC games have this issue, and it's kind of interesting.
Hmm.
Let's grab these guys.
Yeah.
Just exploring.
So this level's kind of empty. Is
Yeah,
my main feeling about it.
I feel this way about level 4 in general. Like, it's the largest level by far. It's very linear, and it's gonna feel like there's not much to it. This level is just the brown, gross old floor, this gray, basically featureless wall, the whole time.
Yeah. There's a degree to which it almost kind of feels like a level you would make with a level editor,
Yeah.
where it's like, well, I've got sort of simple tools and I can make a layout with these, but I can't really innovate.
Yeah. I wonder how much of it has to do with, this is the final level of the game and they're running out of steam. Um, I've heard, some commentary to that effect from people I've watched talking about this game. And by people, I mean the only 2 or 3 people in the entire world talking about this game. But I don't know if I agree with that because I just don't know. I don't know what was going through the developers' heads. Because they weren't under the gun of a big publisher. They could have done whatever they wanted with it. So the idea that they ran out of time and just threw something together, I don't think is true. So here we have the Garbage River. This, like the Poison Pond, will drain your health. And when we played, it did drain the health super, super fast, but it was possible to survive going across, but barely. It turns out there is a scroll in the river, and luckily for us, it is not required to beat the game. But I'm going to go get it. It's down this way, and if I strafe run underwater, which is a thing you can do it in real life too if you really, really try. You can just go in here, and then you stop taking damage once you get inside. So we never saw this when we played because you couldn't survive the trip.
Can imagine.
Yeah.
This water must never be touched by human hands.
I also like the way the game is trying to signal that you're going to run out of air soon as the gasp at the top. But if I was gasping underwater, I'd be dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of mean of them to put that there when you don't even need it, huh?
Yeah. It's one of the few
Like, I can't
times...
imagine anybody finding it.
Yeah, it's one of the few times there's an unnecessary scroll that actually requires some effort to get. Most of the time, all of the unnecessary scrolls are pretty easy to find, and the necessary ones are crazy hard.
Because I feel like that's something you only really go looking for if you're running out of ways to proceed. Because, it clearly signals to you that it's going to kill you if you jump in there. And I guess if you're used to video game tropes, you figure, maybe there's something down here, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, what's up with this? This is kind of the most interesting thing we've seen so far.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, like this idea. It almost feels like a similar sort of messaging to the Mall of Distractions, this idea of just material things. But where the mall was bright and vibrant, this is kind of like the end point of it. Just everything from the mall was thrown into a big pit, and now it doesn't matter anymore. Right?
Yeah. Or even like, after you have died and gone, these things will remain and be purposeless and atrophy and rust.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty good. I like that this is here. My only thing, because this whole thing is apparently me just criticizing the game endlessly for hours and hours, is I would have put things in there that realistically like a 12-year-old boy would have and quote unquote cherish, like maybe the basketball, but no one has this many basketballs.
3 giant cigarettes in a pile.
Because your character is the 11, 12-year-old or whatever, 13.
My
14.
revolving bed.
Yeah.
Which faces me
textures.
wherever.
Yeah, the revolving bed,
okay.
Cigarettes, adding machines here. Yeah, that's what those are.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I think the idea, my assumption, right, is like, hey, this is you can't take it with you message. So if you're collecting money, right, you're collecting up treasures in the world. The adding machine, I think, symbolizes counting, your money.
Yeah.
Is my guess, anyways.
Yeah, I think, like, again, from a messaging perspective, what they're trying to do here is on point. The plane is an interesting one. I don't know too many people who actually have them, like real planes.
Maybe it's a plain bed.
Yeah, I sleep in a big
like one of
bed
those
with
like
my wife.
car-shaped beds.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Very impressive. Glad that you shared that.
That was a weird buzzing sound.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's not coming through on that. You know, if it's coming through on the audio, so what? This game is weird, and yeah,
And we're weird. So,
yeah.
but I am hearing that too. Is that not a background noise?
That seems to be the game.
Interesting.
It's fine here. Nope, not there. Wow. Well, you know what? We're just gonna have to deal with it. Because I'm not sure why it would do that. Huh. Well, if it becomes an issue even further down the road, maybe I'll see about it. But nothing has changed about my audio since last week. So.
Seems fine. Yeah. So we're in a garbage dump now, huh?
Yep. Yeah, you know, they're really driving home sort of the point of selfishness. We get it. Like, it's bad and it's disgusting and it leads to just death. But it does, after a while, just get a little bit sore on the eyes because we're just looking at gross stuff for an hour.
Yeah. It's kind of weird, too. This is tangential, kind of, but it's weird how being something can trigger a memory, because, like, if you had asked me to tell you what was going to be in this level, I wouldn't have said, oh, there's a garbage dump with these kind of gray and green and orange looking piles of very polygonal garbage. But walking in here immediately, my brain's like, oh yeah, I remember the orange and the gray, two different colored garbage piles. I remember this. Yeah, weird. Instantly remember that was a thing.
Yeah, it is strange. Like, when I came back to this area the first time, picking this game up, finding the Saints X patch, going like, oh man, I remember this. So this area here is another one that doesn't work with the ascended frame rate. You can only move slowly through the garbage. What's going to happen is the walls are going to start closing in and we're going to have to make a run for it. With the boosted frame rate, the walls basically crush you instantly. But you could jump on the tops up there and cross the whole area that way. So I'm able to cross this now, but just in case, we're going to save the game. And there's one of these that I can't cross, but there's a secondary way to do it. So I'm going to strafe run to get through it. The one behind me is going, then the one in front of me is going to move, and the one behind me is going to move. And this is how you get through this area. Until we get to right about here. And I've memorized this because my first time I just kept running, and when I ran into here, I got crushed because you can't make that one. So you gotta make right back here. And then that one's gonna try to crush you behind you, which is kind of unfair. So there you go. It's not really unfair. It's one of the few times the game developers really do get you with the trap. Like, most of the traps are really easy to not fall for, but that one actually is gonna get you.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't expect it to. You expect it just to keep running.
All right, this is what we need to cross the poison pond. So, like that shield upgrade we got in level 3, this basically does that. But instead of giving the health to us now, we can use it at any time to boost our health to 200, and then our maximum will always be 200. So we want to be very strategic in how we use it. So let me strafe run through the rest of this, because it's going to try to squish me again. Neat. So we're going to do our one bit of backtracking now. So now's a good time to talk any more thoughts about the Swamps of Selfishness, because we're going to basically be looking at a bunch of brown and gray for like 2, 3, 4 minutes straight, nothing else.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that this area in particular has really grabbed me. Like, I'm remembering things as we're playing. But it is kind of maybe not the most interesting. Maybe it's just because like we've played through 3 levels already and we've seen some pretty, more aesthetically eye-catching scenery.
Level 3 in particular was good at that. For how much I had to say about level 3, there's a lot of little glitchy artifacts here. A lot I have to say about level 3 from the messaging perspective. Aesthetically, it was really interesting. Level 1 was similarly very interesting, whilst level 2 was not so much. So this is just a lot of brown and gray. I imagine that a lot of the glitches is due to the engine not being able to handle certain things, because some of the reasons that these big levels are designed to actually be a bunch of smaller levels with connecting hallways is, as I go through these hallways, we're loading more of the level, and so this level being the largest might be why this kind of stuff is happening. So we're going to cross this again. There is, I'm going to just save in case. There is another secret under the water down here. This one doesn't even have a scroll in it. It's just stuff. But yeah, they hid a bunch of stuff in the garbage river. Weirdly enough, the garbage river extends for a long distance. Let me pull up the map because we're going to need it later anyway. Like, look how far it extends even now. If you look up the maps for this game, you will see these extend a ridiculous amount. And you'd think, oh, there's probably a secret. There is not. They just made the garbage river go for like 2 miles that way. You can go if you
I don't know.
somehow glitch the game
If
so
there's
that
like
the river doesn't hurt you.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a technical reason for that, or if it was kind of like you just like throw down the asset and you're like, no reason to delete it. Just may as well leave it there.
I mean, I like that kind of stuff in general, but given that there's kind of nothing here, it ends up being like feels like an accident. But that'd be very nitpicky to say to blame the developers for doing that kind of thing. Generally, I like.
Well, it reminds me, like I think we've talked about this before, just outside of this recording. Back in the day, right when we were kids, I feel like there was a degree of exploration in games, and again, not that there isn't today, but I think it's because we were young and everything was newer. Mm-hmm. But I remember like feeling like you would just explore stuff for its own reward. You weren't really expecting a reward. You just would like wonder what would happen if I climbed the top of that tower. Mm-hmm. What would happen if I go to the end of this river? And I feel like games kind of just had those things in them more often. But again, it's probably nostalgia, just kind of making me feel like there was more of that back then.
I'm going to use
my map. But I feel like it's an example
here.
Of it.
Yeah, I'm going to use my map here because that way I'll know which direction to go, because I'm going to strafe run through the pond to take less damage. If I just go for it, I don't know if I'll make it. Oh, hold on, let's save. Just in case I die here. We're going to strafe run to the island here. Okay, so we made it with plenty of health to spare. Got the scroll. Huh? We need that. So now I'm going to save again because I'm going to try to strafe run across and then use the item while I'm doing that. But sometimes the game gets really picky about using items if I'm pressing too many buttons. So we're going to do this. There we go. Now we're at 200 health. And we're back.
And that's just a one-time item, right?
Yep.
You only get that once in the game.
Yeah, only get it
so,
once.
Like, imagine if you had used that earlier, not knowing you needed it to...
With the game running at the correct frame rate, it actually is still possible to cross and back if you use it early, as long as you start at full health. It's just a little harder. If I do the cross, and then use the item, I give myself basically 300 health, because I only lost about 150 in that. So it is possible. It's just a lot harder to do. And now that I have 200 max health, the game is essentially unlosable at this point. Maybe on the harder difficulties, I might still have, because enemies do more damage there. But at this point now, I have so much health and shielding that it's really just a matter of clearing the enemies out of my way, rather than any degree of being able to be killed by them. I love that the bog slows down your forward movement, but not your sideways movement, so I can just strafe through the bog. That's how it is. So anyway, it's too bad that this is the backtracking we do, because there's not much to say about this level. It really...
I think we kind of covered it all. I like how everything in the level has some kind of symbolic significance, but the poison pond is just, why the heck not? This is the pond of poison.
Yeah, it's cool that they do that kind of stuff. And it's, I guess, not as themed as the first 3 levels. Like, each of the first 3 levels is like, we're going to argue about one particular thing in Christianity. And this one kind of is a free-for-all. Like, after this level, we're going to do a level that isn't related to the Swamps of Selfishness at all. The nice thing about this level, at least from my perspective, is it kind of gets better as you go, so that the final area is one of the most interesting places in the game. One of the few places where the game's own soundtrack isn't that distracting. Because, the loops are short, but they're less sort of ambient, weird noises that get irritating after a minute or two, and they're more melodic and yeah, you don't listen to the same track for 20 minutes as you're trying to figure out your way through the maze.
Yeah, if you wanted ambient noises that get annoying quickly, you could just let me talk.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, so now that we've gone through all that, we're going to do no more real backtracking. We're just going to finish off the swamps. We're almost done with them. This is the final little area. We have to open the one scroll door that's here. Those of you who know how level 4 functions, you might think, well, there's a transporter at the end of the level like there was in level 3, so why don't you just grab the stuff and then use the transporter to come back here and save yourself the backtracking at that point? The answer to that is we need the Poison Pond scroll in the next level, and so if we decide to do it with the transporter method, we have to do 2 backtracking moves rather than 1. And so it ends up being longer. That's for the hordes of speedrunners who are looking to, play this game.
Optimize Saints of Virtue.
Yeah, we're optimizing the route through Saints of Virtue. Having to.
I'm sure they would just do the
Yeah.
jump over the wall trick whenever they feel like it.
Also, let me know what you think of these scroll doors in level 4.
Please yourself first.
As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another.
Ooh, a key.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the scroll doors are kind of not really arguments and rebuttals so much as they are like, here's a thing, and then but this is what the Bible says about that thing, and so not A but B, and I don't know if it's meant to be like an argument so much as like, hey, what is the kind of the not complementary, but like the opposite of this, like what is the opposite way of thinking, more so than it is an argument that's meant to defeat that thing.
I just find it interesting. Like I had my gripes about levels 1 and 3, how they use the scrolls. I think they use the scrolls really well in this level. Like I like how it starts with this "please yourself" first, and instead of the scroll being like "don't please yourself, you stupid," it was like, actually, what if you loved people? It's like, oh, I get it.
Oh
now.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a really smart choice there because it's instead of counteracting a positive with a negative, you counter positive with a different positive. Right? And I don't mean positive as in friendly or good, as in like a positive being do this and a negative being don't do it. A positive saying do X is countered with a positive saying do Y. And this is the only level that really does that. I think it's a much smarter way to approach using the Bible for, Christian instruction.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's even a degree to which you might argue a lot of, or the way to think about the teachings of the Bible and Scripture isn't necessarily always like, hey, the way that people are doing things is wrong and bad, do it this way instead, so much as, hey, this is actually a better and more fulfilling or like spiritually pure way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Which I guess you could say is a way of setting up a, like, this is better, that way's bad, dichotomy, but I think it's a little bit better framing of like, hey, it makes sense, it's natural to do this, but this is even better. Yeah,
it's framing it as here's a good way to live rather than focusing on how everybody else sucks. It more rightly focuses on like what you can do to be a better person rather than how you can condemn everybody else for not being a good person. You'll notice we also skipped.
But anyways,
the altar
we've moved into a
moved into a new area.
Skipped the altar. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah,
we kind of blew through that little room back there.
Yeah,
the chamber.
There was an altar, and I blew through that because you can't pray for strength if you're above 100 shield and above 100 health. You can pray for it, but nothing happens. So it's just interesting. I go by the altar, and in my head I go, I don't need this. It's like it feels like a very unchristian thing.
Lord, please give me strength. My child, you are already strong enough.
Wizard of Oz style. You already have courage. Okay.
Wait, really? Yeah. I had this the whole time and nobody told me.
At some point we're going to see what level we're entering. I don't know if I missed it. Did it show up?
I think it showed up. It said we were in like the ruins of Pride or something
I missed
like
it.
that.
I didn't
think
notice. I was thinking I was waiting
we
for
were
it.
yacked and
Yeah,
we
Ruins of
were
Pride. Here it is.
bloviating.
Ruins of Pride. This is the largest area in the game, on its own. And is he coming closer? It looks like he's coming closer ever so slowly. So I'm just wait for this guy. Yeah, there he is.
Here he comes.
Haha, you missed. Yeah, that's fine. So this area,
Bet you feel smart.
it's easy for me to get lost. I'm going to be pulling out this auto map a bit just to make sure I don't do that. So I know that this path, if I follow it, will eventually take me out of the Ruins of Pride. However, I need to collect some things. There is one scroll door I need to open. There are 4 scrolls here, but only 2 are required, and of course they are the 2 hardest ones to get. So I'm going to basically go through this whole area until I find all those things. And it's kind of interesting, but you're going to get tired of it quick, I'm afraid, because it's going to look like this for like a half an hour. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm sorry.
Yes, say, what is this place? It feels like a Valorant map or something.
Yeah. Like, it could be the limitations of the engine as well as what most computers could run in 1999, because the ruins are just kind of these walls with the rusty texture on them, which is very obvious to see how the texture is being repeated. But it's kind of interesting how it's like Ruins of Pride, and we dealt with the Palace of Pride in level 2, so it's almost a commentary on that.
If it wasn't for like the enemies, this would be like a very liminal space experience.
Yeah.
You know what this vaguely reminds me of? Back when we used to go to summer camp, and then I spent a couple summers serving on the staff for that camp. We would go to this outing. We would do this outing where we would go to this abandoned military base on the shore, and it had all these kind of like, I'm sure architecturally it all made sense, but being sort of an abandoned space that was no longer in use, wasn't populated by anything, no furniture, no equipment, no nothing. Everything felt like it was like purposeless and like weird architectural like hallways and bridges and corners and stuff. It sort of reminds me of that.
Yeah. It's it's kind of unfortunate because I think this really comes down to the engine and that kind of stuff. Why this feels so so bare. More graphical glitches. Unfortunately, for those of you who are seeing this game and thinking I must have it, I must play this for myself, these graphical glitches will happen no matter what. It's not because I'm running OBS and Discord call at the same time. It just happens with the game. So if you play it, you will see those, and pretty much only in this level, because I think the level is a little bit larger than the engine really wants to deal with. But yeah, it's hard to create things that look like things, because it's similar to a Doom engine in that you just have these walls and you just put a texture on them, and you can't do anything very fancy with the shapes of buildings. The fact that we can have multiple levels, of course, is more advanced than Doom. The original Doom game, you could not do anything close to this. But 1999 also saw, was it 1997 or 1999 was Half-Life, built on the Quake. Yeah, 1999 was Half-Life. So same year, built on the Quake engine, which was capable of doing way more than this. So of course, I mean, a large video game company is easily going to outclass 2 guys in their bedroom making a game. But for the most part, games in the 90s, you really couldn't build things that looked like things. This is just what it looked like. That's all you could make.
Yeah. But this is kind of interesting compared to some other parts. Like this, I think what we were just doing there a minute ago is kind of the most verticality we've really seen in a while for the level design.
It makes me think like if these guys had instead decided to create a game and you'd given them like the modern computer with Unity on it or something, they might have been able to do more. And so it's not so much that the game has problems because of developers so much as because of the engine. Kind of. I mean, I'm sure, they're not professional developers. There's things they don't know how to do and stuff, but they definitely tried to make the best with what they were given.
Yeah, like you could almost turn this section into a little abandoned city free running kind of
deathmatch. This is a deathmatch area. Very much so.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, so I've gotten one of the required scrolls. The The one in the parking garage is what
like-
you have to get. I call it the parking garage. It looks like it's an abandoned parking garage. That one's required. I know the other one's at the far end, but I forget what's over here. So I'm going to explore this area too. And I just totally interrupted you. What were you saying?
No, you're good. I was just kind of agreeing with you about the deathmatch map. Like a lot of older.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an actual game that this makes me think of, but you know, I remember playing a lot of little run and gun kind of multiplayer games where the level design was really, here's a flat area with some obstacles. Go shoot each other.
Yeah, a lot
What just happened?
of early death, like Doom had a deathmatch as well, and it would look a lot like this. Although a lot of Doom deathmatch stuff was made just using the maps from the regular game, rather than specially made deathmatch maps, at least at first. So like this could easily just be a deathmatch map, but the game doesn't handle multiplayer. Of course, it wasn't built for that.
Saints of Richie multiplayer when?
Hold on.
We need that mod.
Okay, this is the new way to go. Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately the game doesn't prioritize combat, so you just... It wouldn't really work very well to have that kind of stuff. It's too bad.
I don't know, man. It's got power-ups. It's got multiple weapons.
Yeah. Multiple...
Donkey
Yeah.
Kong 64 multiplayer. Got nothing on this.
Oh my gosh. Thanks for bringing that up. I've forgotten entirely about Donkey Kong 64 multiplayer.
That and Star Fox 64 multiplayer, which
Yeah, that
I
weird...
feel like those two. We went through a cycle where we played the crap out of both of those.
There was that weird period
I don't know
where
why.
it just felt like every game was like, we need a multiplayer version, and now I say, no, you don't.
The Banjo 2E multiplayer games were actually pretty fun.
Yeah. Okay, no, I'm gonna follow the right wall. So I came in through here, I'm gonna follow this way. So yeah, the area we did first, what the heck was that? That's a total graphical glitch. This wall, I think, was extending to the floor.
I definitely have been seeing a lot of graphical glitches, and I can't tell if it's the game or if it's like you know, me watching you play over the stream.
Yeah.
And the quality, because I'm getting a little bit of quality like drops and things, so
Yeah.
I just can't tell if it's the game or not. But it feels like this area is struggling a little bit to
Yeah.
keep up.
Which is interesting because like the game struggles anyway, even if I'm not running multiple programs at the same time. And I know that, you know, trying to record with OBS or any recording software, of course, is going to add an extra strain. But like this game can't be using that much RAM, right? Like it can't be that. So it's just, I'm going to hope at the end of the day that the recording quality is good enough. Because the game is not high def enough for me to care if it's got a little bit of...
Once it's got some like terrible optimization going on in the background, I can't imagine it's asking for a lot of your CPU.
You can do everything under your own power.
I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
It's kind of funny. I knew it was going to be that verse.
Yeah, I like that as well, because we had similar things from the first and third levels where this thing of you can do it on your own. And in those ones, the verses they chose were things like, no, you can't, you sad sack of a man.
I mean, there are verses in the Bible that are very much like, I can do nothing of my own strength. Like, a little bit more despondent, but...
Yeah, but they're not great responses. Yeah, they're not great responses. If someone comes up to you and says, you can do it, it's usually a pretty bad response to say, no, you can't.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you really wanted to, again, not to, like, talk about selling your worldview to other people, but like if you wanted people to want to ask more about and become interested in your faith, you wouldn't want to just be like, actually you're worthless and you can't do anything, and the fact that you even thought that you had worth is laughable and you're pitiful, and like, because some people do actually kind of talk that way, like not quite as dumbed down, but there are people whose idea of like representing their faith is to just constantly like emphasize our failure and our sinfulness and our inability to save ourselves. And it's like, okay, like we get it, but like, what's the good part, you know?
Yeah, there's definitely that thing. So I do appreciate in this one where it's like the response to the you can do everything under your own power is to emphasize you can still do it. It's just that the power comes from elsewhere. So it still keeps that message positive. And again, not positive in the sense that it is like a good feeling message, positive, although that's always nice, but positive in the sense of rather than saying you can't, is a you can message, which is always going to be a better sell. And you mentioned selling, and I think I did in a previous video. Who knows anymore? But like, I know we associate selling or salesmanship with deceit or with kind of being a sleazebag, but there's nothing inherently wrong with salesmanship, with being able to present your worldview in a way that is attractive to other people. Is this where the secret is? There's a secret on one of these, and I never remember which one it is, but we'll find it. But anyway, the idea of selling something, like you can sell a car, but you can also sell, say, your argument. So if you want to have an argument that is talking about how we all need God's power to do X, Y, Z, selling it in a way that says, oh, interesting glitch.
Oh my.
I would like to say this glitch happened to me when I was playing this morning to practice in this exact spot. Anyway, if you want to sell, the you can't do anything under your own power and emphasize you can't do anything, very few people want to buy that message, using buy, so to speak, not in a way of like you're being underhanded when you sell that, but like few people are going to say, yeah, sign me up for that church. Whereas if you emphasize, no, you can do everything, it's just you can't. You're not going to do it on your own. You're going to do it with the Lord's help, kind of stuff. At the very least, that is a more positive message because it says, you still can do what you want to do. It's just that you are no longer relying on yourself to do it, right? So that's selling the argument in a way that's more attractive. It's not in any way lying to get that thing sold. Again, using the language of selling to emphasize the argument rather than to imagine yourself as a salesman. But yeah, like, it's always good to present your worldview in a way that people will find attractive. Why would you not do that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Don't disagree. I do think there's like a loaded sort of affiliation or association with salesmanship.
Yeah,
and I probably wouldn't use that term to describe, trying to share your faith or your beliefs, but
Cool.
that's good. I think the idea is like, hey, if you want to show people why you're, whatever it is you're talking about, your idea, your product, whatever it is, you want to show people why it's great, then you need to know how to like emphasize the reason it's great.
Yeah.
And that, put the best foot forward and all that.
So yeah, I usually don't. Oh yeah, good idea to say. I usually don't use the term salesmanship that often as well. It's just in this context, you're thinking about you're presenting an argument, you are making a claim, you are selling something. It's just sort of selling an idea, and so yeah, exactly. You want to be able to present what you have to say in a way that is attractive. It is very loaded because a lot of people hear that like, oh, you have to make sure that what you're saying sounds attractive to people. They hear that as, oh, I should just lie about it then. It's like, no, that's not what I'm saying here. Don't lie. Anyway, so I think we finished everything in this area. We opened the scroll door, which is very important. We got another scroll, but we don't need that one. So let's continue. There's one more scroll we need, and then we can leave the ruins. This, again, I said this is a long area. I think it's been like 20 minutes here. I'm not totally sure.
Who's counting?
Yeah. It's a long area, and it's kind of visually interesting, but this kind of stuff does get a little bit dull after a while, and it's hard to tell where you are because it all looks the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fortunately, this part of the ruins does look a little different. So at least if you're in this area with these shapes, you're close to the end of the ruins. That's actually where the exit is, but we don't want to leave yet. So at least they have different types of structures here with different textures.
Yeah.
Which, of course, they put in an area that was farther away. We had to walk their quarter to get there because they had to unload the other textures and then load these ones in. Because the engine can only handle like 4 textures, apparently. That's too bad. Cause
Yeah, do what you can with what you got.
Exactly. Yeah, as much as I'll point out the lack of textures as, a flaw in the game, I would not say it's a flaw that's caused by designers not knowing how to design textures, as much as just using an engine that can't handle these guys. There we go. Got this area over here.
It's that high-octane, blood-pumping combat that we know and love. We've come to know from Saints of Virtue.
Yeah.
2 enemies at once.
There's an area later in this game. Well, there's a couple areas with lots of enemies, but there's a specific area that's designed as a combat area. And it's too bad because if the combat were more engaging in this game, they could really do a lot with it. But as it stands, it just ends up highlighting the flaws in the combat. So we have another altar we don't need at this moment. How did I get up here?
Guy doesn't like altars.
Yeah.
Just like another altar. Don't need that.
You can pray for wisdom, but I already know where to go, so...
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Know-It-All.
Well, if you play this game for the first time and you don't actually know what to do or where to go, and you haven't followed this amazing walkthrough that we're making right now,
Is that what this is?
then you could pray for wisdom and be told, but the wisdom's not that helpful, I found. It's hard to tell what they're trying to get you to do.
I do feel like this is a game where you could just wander around aimlessly for quite some time, not knowing where to go.
This level in particular is really bad for that.
Yeah.
Despite this being a roughly linear level, there's these side paths, but you basically follow the main road, go on the side path, get everything in it, and then come back.
That rock up there is going to fall, isn't it?
Yeah, despite the side path stuff, it's still a linear level in its progression, but because of the way everything looks, it's really easy to get lost. It's just really, really easy to get lost here. And
it's linear, but you're going through a bunch of kind of wider, open corridors.
It's the most wide open area in the game, and the engine is barely holding together. So this area has another thing that you can't do in modern computers with better frame rates. So we need to cross this chasm to get a scroll. Get out of my way. Alright, you need to cross this chasm to get a scroll over there. Can I hit this guy from here?
Nice.
That worked out. We need to cross this chasm, but we can't. If you have the modern computer, something past the 90s, you can just jump over it because you jump to the world height. The intended way is to use this boulder to knock all of those over and make a path. And if you try to push the boulder, nothing happens. It will in this, because I'm playing with the DOS box, I'm playing with the patch that makes the game work. But if you just tried to run this on a modern computer, the frame rate, for some reason, is also connected to this rock. So it wouldn't work, and you wouldn't make the bridge. And the way that the bridge works, because with this engine, it doesn't actually handle moving terrain. I think what it's trying to do is restructure this area so that it has just a brand new terrain. These are supposed to knock over like dominoes, but they just instantly form a new floor. So I have to stand here. I'm actually going to save because I could mess this up. I'm going to try to push the rock. And then there it is. There's the texture glitch there.
Yeah. I feel like they had to frame it in a way where you couldn't see what happens after you push it until it had actually updated.
Yeah. Then the trouble is, I've never managed to jump back across this chasm without falling in. I'm not sure if you're supposed to make the jump back to there or not. But whatever the case, if you fall in, you appear on the other side, so we can just jump. And listen to the greatest sound effect that's ever been made.
Candy.
So that's the last.
I told you as soon as I saw that rock up there, I was like, well, that's definitely gonna fall at some point. Does the other boulder up there do anything, or is it just there?
I don't know, and I don't particularly care to know, because there's nothing else that can be gotten by pushing boulders.
Is that inquisitive mind?
There's more. There was one more scroll in this ruins I don't think I found, but I don't need it, so I'm not going to go looking for it. And then there's one more scroll, I think, in the entire level in the final area, but it's not used. So we've actually got all the scrolls for the game that we need.
Interesting.
So now we just need to make our push to the final area as soon as we get out of the ruins. So yeah, what do you think about the ruins, David?
I think it's interesting. It is a little bit much wandering around, at least in the first area.
Yeah.
But again, it's a change from the environment before. And I think sort of like with the earlier section, the symbolism isn't like super like heavy-handed around the nose. Like, I mean, like, yeah, it's okay. It's the ruins of pride. We get that instantly, and we don't have to dig too much deeper into that. And they're not like throwing in your face a bunch of like, oh, did you get it though? That it's pride, it like crumbles and it becomes a ruin. It's like, okay, we get it. Simple
Yeah.
enough. It's just a backdrop for the level.
Yeah. Cool. So now we're going to move on to the third area, which is called... I was hoping the title card. Okay, yeah, it was a bit weird. I was hoping it would appear right when I said that. Paths of Perseverance. And this...
That's just that you practice.
Yeah. Do you remember this area?
Not currently, no.
Yeah.
Maybe it will come up.
Yeah.
Maybe it will spark a memory in a second here.
It is entirely a straight shot. That's all it is. There's nothing to collect here. It's just a straight shot full of enemies. So that's what we're
Got
going
it.
to do.
I guess the idea being like, hey, you've got to get through this gauntlet. Perseverance kind of makes
Yeah.
sense.
I actually like that idea. The only thing that doesn't work with this level is it highlights that the combat isn't great because
Yeah.
it's all combat. But the concept of like this final sort of gauntlet you have to push through really works for me because from a design perspective, what we're doing is we're approaching the final step of the game. And so when we... good grief, I can't hit anything in my life. So when we have this final push, it just kind of helps raise the stakes.
Yeah.
And make us feel like we're pushing to the end of the game now. We really are feeling it.
Yeah, I kind of like that. And again, I know I said a minute ago, like it's not on the nose. And what I mean by that is like, because it's a very simple idea and it's direct in the sense that it's like, yeah, you understand it at a glance and now you have to walk it out.
Yeah.
But it's as simple as that. They give you the text with the enemies. They say this is perseverance. This is kind of that exercise in perseverance, and they don't have to keep hitting you with it. You just know what it is, and now you're experiencing it. It's like you could argue it's organic storytelling in a way.
Yeah.
They had to give you a title card, but it's once they give you that little title card, it makes sense. I mean, it could have easily just been a sign on the wall too. Like welcome to the path of perseverance, and you get it from there. So I kind of like that. They don't have to stress it too much. It just kind of is what it is, and you get it. And yeah, kind of that like push to the end of the game. Like it's sort of like a oh my gosh, surprising and didn't crash. I was gonna say it's sort of like a boss rush, except boss rushes are often like
Terrible.
like extra content. Well, they're also terrible.
Yeah.
They're kind of like extra content, like, hey, challenge yourself now that you've beaten the game. But there's definitely games where you kind of have to go through a gauntlet like this to get to the final boss. I can't think of an example right now, but
Legend of
it's-
Zelda Wind Waker has a boss rush you have to go through at the end.
yeah.
And one of the Metroids, I think, does. I think
Yeah.
that was it. I think we just finished that room.
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to say one of the Mega Man games, or maybe a
All
couple
of the
them.
early ones did.
Oh, they do all,
Yeah.
yeah, make it the boss rush kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I'm gonna save in here. Yeah, yeah. As you're saying, I like the push. I like the organic storytelling of it. And another thing to point out is this the first level where the location is not an inherently negative thing, because everything else so far has been a critique of some aspect of either Christian life or secular life sort of thing. And so the area is meant to be seen as bad. And so like Mall of Distractions, you're not supposed to think the mall is good, or the whatever Shrine of Heaven or something. Ooh, Slits in the side of the walls. Wonder what they're for. So like those
Yes.
types of places, you're supposed to see a critique of modern society in them. Whereas passive perseverance is wholly positive. We're persevering. That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. So these are going to shoot something at you,
they're
right?
gonna-
Yeah.
it's just- so I was thinking I would avoid the fireball, but it turns out the best strategy is this. Run! You're going to get hit. It's going to happen. But you're going to get hit a lot less than if you try to dodge them. So we just do that. And we got through. This next area doesn't appear on the map and will be entirely dark. So just so you know, that is what it's supposed to be.
Cool.
And you think, oh, that's not that dark. I can still see the walls. Hold on a second. That's what we're looking at. But there is a
And this
neat
game
effect.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, this game doesn't really have any lighting sources. Oh, my.
If you fire, you'll see. Now, the enemies here are nice because it does tell you where to go. You just go toward where the enemies are. But if for some reason you do have to backtrack and you have to go through this area again, you have no way through except this, making sure. Because this doesn't show up on the map. There is supposedly a secret here. I've not been able to find it, even looking at a map of the area. I've not been able to find the wall that's supposed to open up. So I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah.
Because
It's kind of funny that as soon as I said the game gives you no lighting source, you showed me
Yeah.
that I was wrong.
Yep.
It took me a second to realize that you're firing the weapon with what was giving you the light, which is kind of a cool idea, actually.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like, it works everywhere, but you only notice it in the dark areas of the game.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so let's grab those. We're full up again. And here we are. This is the final area of the game. We've done it. Outside the temple of your heart. Let's save. We're going to save a bunch here. So for my 100,000 viewers watching this from the comfort of your own homes, this level has caused me the most crashes in the game, even with the Saints X patch, which makes the game a lot more stable. I have had this game crash on me in the final level multiple times, so I'm going to save as much as possible so that if the game does crash, then I can just reload. I don't have to redo too much stuff. Hopefully it doesn't crash at all, but just so you know, you're prepared in the eventuality of a complete and total shutdown of the game.
Yeah.
And it's something I'm aware of, and it will not surprise me that much if it happens. It usually doesn't happen till I get into the temple, but it could happen anywhere around here. I don't know why. Again, possibly because the game is really struggling to load everything in here because the engine's not designed to have games this large and detailed.
I noticed the sky has gone from being gray to blue over the course of this level. I don't know if it was a gradual transition or if it was just like, it was gray and now it's blue, but it's kind of a nice touch.
They load a new skybox for every area, which is why when you're going from area to area, it's always through a tunnel of some kind, because they just swap out the skybox. So there's a skybox in the Selfishness Swamp, there's a skybox in the Ruins of Pride, and I think it's the same skybox for the Passive Perseverance, because it's basically the same textures as that. And then we have a new skybox here, which I think we keep all the way through the rest of the game. But yeah, it's a neat effect because it makes the level go from dreary to, more and more interesting as we progress.
Which is kind of interesting too, because it's kind of getting a more positive vibe as you get closer to the Temple of the Heart, which is interesting because you would think as you're pushing towards the end of the game, you would be pushing into a more ominous sort of environment.
Exactly. Especially
but this doesn't feel ominous.
Yeah, if you want to imagine what a stereotypical evangelical Christian is going to try to promote is the idea that the heart is wretched. So we're supposed to be getting to your inner self is supposed to be the worst part. But these game designers have made the choice to make it sound like your heart actually isn't on its own a horrible thing. Although, of course, it is overrun with enemies right now. But it's like it's an interesting choice because the sort of subtle message you get from that is that, like, it's not so much to say, like, oh, you're not such a bad guy, but, like, rather than looking at yourself as this horrible, evil thing, it's just, you're a person and you're beautiful the way you are in a sense, even though there is, of course, things you have to deal with. So
yeah, and well, this is like a temple that needs to be protected and kept pristine, and it's overrun right now, but, it's your duty to tend to it.
You have to tend to what you are. Um, it's just an interesting way of looking at it, which it's a pretty Christian way of looking at it as well. I'm not trying to say that they're like being incredibly uh, shocking by making this statement. It's just a lot of times I see evangelical Christianity try to hammer home over and over how horrible and wretched everybody is, and this game doesn't really go for that, which I really like. Yeah, I think the messaging in this level is good. So.
Yeah. Interesting.
I'm a little.
These kind of
Yeah.
seraphim or angel kind of
Yeah.
guards, which is interesting because like I feel like in I don't know if it's like in biblical imagery as much as maybe more traditional Catholic, through evangelical. But the concept of having a guardian angel is kind of an interesting idea to have these two angels guarding the entrance to your heart. Sort of an interesting tie in there.
Yeah. And if it's not like the never-ending story, it's fine. I can walk through this.
I don't think I remember that specific reference.
Yeah. There was the statues that if you walk through, I'm trying to remember exactly what it is. It's been like 10 years since I saw the movie. I think it was like if you go through, the statues will kill you unless you're pure of heart in some way. I don't think that was what it was, but there's these
I'm going with that now.
Sphinx type statues. So that's the transporter if you need to backtrack. If you didn't get the 2 keys that we have, the transporter will take you to the Swamps of Selfishness and then the Ruins of Pride. But we don't need to take it. And that's for the best, because backtracking in this level is such a chore. So we're going to ignore that. All right, I'm going to save here, because this is where I've had one of the times the game crashed on me. I'll let this guy eat sword. All right. Okay. Yeah, this room isn't that bad. It's just one of the 4 enemies that show up in this level. So 1 worldliness, 1 self-righteousness, 1 arrogance, and 1 self-glorification. And that's that. Once you enter this area, the game is basically done. You basically win once you're here, provided you have the items. And the reason is, if we head over this way, we see this river. Do you remember this from your first time playing?
I'm having like a vague recollection of this, but
Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
You can just heal. So even though there's some pretty heavily guarded areas in the temple, you can always just leave, jump in the river, heal right up. Which is the interesting choice. I kind of like that because, again, a typical game, you think as you get close to the end, it's just going to get steadily harder in a very predictable arc. And this game is like, nope, the hardest part is before this. Once you get in, you just got to finish the game. So let's check out the areas around the temple and hope the game doesn't crash here. This is another crash spot for some reason. So far, so good. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting having the River of Life in this, what I assume is the center of the temple.
Yes.
Because obviously the Bible says that Jesus is the River of Life, so...
I don't think the Bible actually says that. The Bible says Jesus is the bread of life. Bread of life.
I'm sorry. That's what I'm thinking.
There's the song, the American folk song. I've got a river of life flowing out of me.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
To walk and the blind to see. Opens prison doors, set the captives free. I've got a river of life flowing out of me.
Yeah, sing the whole... We're going to get copyright struck.
Yep.
I think the... maybe I'm thinking of there's a psalm that talks about being a tree planted by the stream of living water. So maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yep.
But where we're in the land of dreams.
Yeah, land of dreams. The one wall that doesn't have the texture. This is.
I was going to say why.
Okay.
All right.
I was like, what the heck is it doing? As I was trying to walk through, it was like
another locale that's more, I think, meant to be positive in theme than negative, which is interesting.
It's positive and it's just aesthetic. There's actually nothing here you need for the game. It's just this weird place to be. I like it. I like them doing this.
It feels like an exhibit in like the Modern Art Museum or something.
Yeah, it's such a wild, like, it's this kind of stuff that I miss in more modern games. I understand why more modern games don't do this, because it's a bit of a trip, and obviously graphical fidelity is not very high, and modern games want to look better. But like anyone out there going for low poly, like 90s vaporware liminal space aesthetic, like, you should play this game, take some notes. So this will take us back to
sort of almost making me motion sick, though.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of a space that kind of just exists for aesthetic and whimsy, I guess.
Yeah, it's
not
great.
that modern games don't do that, but you walked through that room and you had a aesthetic experience
Yep.
that didn't contribute to the progression of the game, but it maybe contributed towards giving you a certain feeling. It's a
Yeah.
mood setter.
Yeah, and it's this idea that the spaces in the Temple of the Heart that represent you are generally positive spaces, the Land of Dreams. Sure, it's infiltrated by arrogance, but it's still a good place. Now we're heading to, the spot. Garden of
That is kind of an
Peace.
interesting. The Garden of Peace. And which enemy is this again? This is the
Self-glorification.
Interesting.
And of
So I was
course,
gonna say the idea of. Go ahead.
we have rivers of life everywhere, so if I get injured more than I want, I just jump in the water.
Oh, hang on.
You're right.
Yeah. Okay. The screen froze for a second, so I thought it was crashing.
Mhm.
So I was gonna say the idea of arrogance being in the dream area is an interesting idea because you could argue some people might conflate their dreams with arrogance, in that like their dreams become a source of arrogance, or their arrogance
Yeah.
spurns them to chase after certain types of dreams. But I don't think that would be saying that dreams are arrogance. It's just saying that, hey, if your dreams
Yeah.
become contaminated by arrogance, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing the connection per se between self-glorification and peace.
It's
that's
kind
a
of harkening
foil.
back to level 3, the New Age stuff. Just kind of going like, it's easy to turn. I don't know. It's
Yeah, maybe if you're saying it's like a false peace, where you sort of glorify yourself by saying like, hey, I don't know. I'm trying to come up with the justification, and I'm not quite getting there. But I think you have to really sort of twist it to be like, it's not peace. It's just glorifying our own ability to sort of like say that we've made a beautiful world that we can live in, and that's perfect the way it is, maybe.
Yeah.
And the idea is like, well, no, that's kind of self-glorification. You're putting your ideal on a pedestal or something. I'm not really sure though.
I'm getting stuck. You know what? I'm not going to go for that shield. I can't get it.
The pinball room.
I'm not entirely sure. It might be reading too much into it to try to connect the Garden of Peace
Sure.
specifically to that thing. It could just be the aesthetic of level 3.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm basing this off of seeing one room that I thought had a cool connection between the enemy and the name of the room.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't know that every room actually has a connection, but it would have been a cool idea to have each room be like infested by the thing that kind of ruins it.
Yeah.
It's like your dreams are ruined by your arrogance. So what's your
Yeah.
peace ruined by? Would be an interesting idea.
Yep. Yep. There we go. Oh,
Kind of funny that you're about to drown in the river of life.
Yep. What a way to go. Right, so we got a
I
scroll
got
that
a
was there.
river of life flowing into me.
Yeah, the scroll's not required again, so I'm just getting it to show you, but we actually have everything
Sure.
we need to finish the game already, so. Yeah, that was the Garden of Peace. I really like the Temple of the Heart. It's my favorite area in the game, so. Good way to end the series.
Very aesthetic.
Yeah. Yep. So those are the two.
A word I keep using.
Yeah, those are the two areas that we don't really. The Garden of Peace and the Land of Dreams are the non-required areas. Everything else we do have to go into at some point. Where'd you come from?
It's hanging out.
Whoa. There we go. I was going to go into here because this is someplace. Hold on. The Faith key opens the door. So if you didn't get the key of Faith from the Swamps of Selfishness, you can't go in here. Halls of Faith. That showed up for half a second. That's what it said. We're in the Halls of Faith.
That's self-righteousness, was it?
Yep.
Or
Yeah, self-righteousness.
which I think you can draw a connection to. Faith can be sort of marred by a sense of holier than now attitude, right? I don't know.
There he is.
It's okay.
Weird. Okay.
So I can see sort of a thematic connection there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow.
It had been too long since we heard the sound effect. You needed to.
Yeah, for sure. Is this going to be like a Indiana Jones moment here?
Yeah, we just jump.
Cool.
Perfect. Oh,
It
okay.
launches us over.
There was nothing to look forward to.
I think it's this one here.
But in keeping with his promise, we are looking forward to a new heaven and a new earth, the home of righteousness.
I like how his reaction was cool.
Yeah. Key of love. So yeah,
Neat. That's pretty neat.
is that just gonna do that forever?
What in the world?
I think that's just it could be a bug that's not supposed to happen. Oh no, it's done.
Oh.
So the game designers in creating the door basically just had it go up for 7 million years. Interesting.
Sure.
Yeah. So we had the key of faith, we had the key of hope, which we haven't used, and now we just picked up key of love. So of course those are the three principal Christian virtues, I believe.
Yeah. It's the whole. Was that the whole area? The whole Hall of Faith?
There's a couple more I'm going to. Just we got the one thing we needed from it. Now there's just a couple other halls with power ups and more enemies to defeat.
Sure. Sort of an abstract environment, though. Like, is it meant to be like a legal court, or like a library hall, or like?
I don't know. It's
I don't know.
hard to tell. Yeah, there's definitely times where the designers like we need to sort of demonstrate this location without text, but they just kind of go with route one. What's the first thing you think of in this case? And sometimes it pays off, and other times it's just baffling.
It gives a vibe. It's ornate. Yeah. It's kind of regal.
Oh, I like it. It's just it definitely has this thing of like, what's it mean?
A bit abstract. Yeah.
Key opens the door to the vault of secrets.
That's interesting. That's very mysterious.
Very secure. It's locked. This, I guess, represents like all your innermost secrets, and we will never open any of the vault doors. They can't be opened.
That's interesting. That's kind of a interesting choice. Tantalizing.
Yep.
Frustrating to people who are convinced that everything in a game must be able to be uncovered.
There we go.
It's interesting actually. I feel like that in a way, whether it's intentional or not, is a reference to there's a verse, I think it's in King of Kings, or not King of Kings, First or Second Kings.
Yeah.
Talks about the depths of a man's heart are like a mystery that I'm paraphrasing, but like he can't know, only God can draw them out. It's kind of interesting. You don't even know it's in there.
Yeah. You're the boss of your life. This is a weird choice for the scripture to contrast this, but
that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved.
Because
I guess the idea is, he's God, he's your boss, not you.
Yeah, you're the boss, he's the boss. But the purpose of that verse is completely unrelated to what it was used there. The purpose of that verse is a sense of like, how do you become saved? Well, this is all you got to do.
Sort of an interesting one.
So we get the golden cross.
Golden cross.
Yeah,
I like the idea. I like the idea of the like secret vaults that even you don't know what's in there. It's your own heart. You can't actually know. Like kind of. I like the idea. Like it hammers home that whole like only God knows what's in here. Only God can draw it out.
Yeah. It is. It's an interesting choice. I really like this place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, we picked up a cross, which we'll use. We'll see in a minute. It's maybe we'll talk about when we get to it and see what you think about how this the ending is handled.
Yeah.
So now there's 2 more halls to go to. They both actually connect to each other eventually. So I'm just going to go through them all and clear out all the enemies. But we're going to go in this side and come out that side.
Sure.
Yep. So we're in the Hall of Obedience. I believe the other side is Hall of Truth, but they both look the same. They both look like this.
Wow.
Yep.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Stained glass.
Yep.
Quite fanciful.
I wonder if they meant fancy rather than fanciful. Because fanciful usually
such
like,
fanciful stained glass.
Yeah, it means like fake, like fanciful. Like what a fanciful idea. Like it's fantasy.
Or like fanciful, like not based in reality, like a little over like whimsical, but like I know what you mean. Like oh, what a fanciful idea. Like
I wonder if the developers just used the wrong word.
No. Or maybe they knew what they were saying. It's a very intentional choice. I'm guessing these are real stained glass.
Possible?
artworks that they've thrown in here.
Digitally thrown on.
Digitally down-res.
Magnificent is a better word for these. You would think there'd be some kind of secret here, but there is not.
Magnificent full.
It's just a big thing on the wall. Yeah, it's.
They forgot to put that window in.
Yeah, it's possible there was supposed to be a window texture there that either wasn't put in or just doesn't load on this version. That's another possibility. But it does sort of show that the windows don't actually go anywhere. It's just a texture on a wall, and then they put a strip of light here. So interesting fact about how the Doom engine works, which this game is not run on the Doom engine, but the engine it's run on was, this child of the child of the child of a Doom engine, is that the game is divided into sectors. And so on this map, you could perhaps paint this entire room as one sector. It's divided based on the lines that make up the walls, and everything within that could be a sector. But every sector has its own individual light level. So instead of this actually being like a light source that's casting this light here, it's just this is one sector, this area. And they just turn the light level up here. And then they have to align the texture on the sector, so it's the same texture as this, and then align it in the X and Z coordinates so that it matches what this is. It's a really interesting way of going about things, because in a modern engine, you just say, hey, turn the lights on, and it would just figure out what to do there. They had to actually...
Yeah, there's so much stuff back in the day that you had to find a way to like simulate or approximate or kind of use a trick. And nowadays it's like, no, I can actually just put that object in the scene now. I can just put a light source in the scene. I don't have to find a way to convey it. Not that there's not still a lot you can do with light sources, but it's much simpler to just throw a light source in the scene.
I think it's a really clever... Hey, get out of my way! Oh my god. I think it's a really clever way to make this room give it the flavor of the light source, while it, of course, can't have a real light source, because the game... There's no dynamic lighting in this type of game. Is this the one? One of these is a secret.
Cool.
There it is.
Cool. Should have known one of the fake systems two the same in the same room.
Yep. All right. I think that's the last secret in the game. I think we've got them all now, or at least all the ones I care to get.
Sure.
I wonder what the significance of using specifically like Catholic Renaissance, era stained glass is, with some wonderful artifacting at the bottom.
Nice. I wouldn't be surprised if it's just, we do sometimes look back at art of a prior era as being more significant or more beautiful or pure compared to more modern art. I think it's just kind of drawing on the reverence of that period.
Could
it's not as if there isn't
Yeah.
more modern or contemporary or even evangelical art, Yeah,
it could just be the trope. If we have this, it makes it look like a church. Rather than any sense of we have to specifically... Okay, here's another... instead of me rushing into the room head first, let's kill this guy first.
Sure.
And then let's rush into the room head first. Out of my
Oh
way.
my gosh.
Out of my way.
What are these guys doing in here?
This is totally the dumbest way to do this room, by the way. Because these guys hit the hardest, and I am definitely paying the price, but I'm just like, I just want to see if I can do it.
This is how I used to play Halo in multiplayer. Like, what do you mean, like, be strategic? No, just pull out the shotgun or whatever and just run in and hope that I can hit them before they hit me.
That was very fun, but it was very not smart.
No, I liked it.
Well, how did you get there? There's not supposed to be a self-glorification in there.
Like, whoops.
Anyway, so I blazed through all of my shield doing that.
Pretty good.
There's more of them, right? Did they not all die? They all died. Good. So that door needs the key of love to open. So before we go there, I'm going to finish off the Hall of Obedience, which will now become the Hall of Truth.
I like those pillars. Very nice.
Yeah, it's neat textures. Easily the most interesting part of the entire game is the Temple of the Heart.
Yeah.
Because it's aesthetically great. Well, there's other aesthetically great areas, but this is the only one that isn't also, like, terrible with the messaging. The messaging is at least on point here. Admire the picture in this stained glass piece.
Don't tell me what I do.
Yeah. I hear you. Where are you? There you go. That, yeah, the teleporty sound. I'm not sure in their AI how self-glorification decides when to teleport, because they're obviously not using it to go long distances or through walls or anything, but they sometimes do that.
I honestly hadn't noticed them teleporting this entire game, so I don't know if they just don't do it very
They
often.
don't do it very
or
often.
if,
And it doesn't really seem to help them out, because I still take care of them pretty easily. Alright, so we're back out here. I'm low on health, and by that I mean I actually have almost full health, but I don't have double full health. But I actually don't need any more health, because I've cleared out every single enemy in this level. So even if I needed to somehow go back through an old, backtrack, there's no more enemies left. Enemies don't respawn. There's no monster
may as well top off the
closets.
tank, you know.
Yeah. So once I get to the door of love here, we're gonna, oops, it's this direction, and then it's this direction. Yeah, once you get here, we're gonna not top off, you were mentioning that. I'm gonna save the game before we go through the door of love, because this is another crash point. But this is basically the end of the game. We're there. In the innermost regions of your heart. There's two little temples here. There's this one here. There's really nothing in it. Holy and pure.
What's going on with these textures?
Yeah, there's an altar here. If you are at this area of the game, you're already basically done. If you didn't pick up the wooden cross, you have to go back and get it. So, of course, if you didn't get the key of hope, I believe, in the Ruins of Pride, then you're not done with the game. So maybe the altar's useful. But at this point, like, I'm done. There's nothing else I need to brace for. This is just an altar. I don't entirely know the significance of this particular temple, because there's one more, and that's the one we need to be at.
Oh, you don't even do anything with that altar in there?
Okay, I was checking. It felt like there was no sound effects. There's no walking sound on this. So I thought, did all the sounds glitch out? No, we're good. This is where we want to be. Throne Room of the Heart. There's some spaces here. There's nothing in them. This is where we are. This kind of throne-y thing. And then there's... Oh, I fell off the edge. Of
you
the
did it.
Thing. That is apparently me.
What? Are you just sitting there in your jeans with no shirt on?
I love that it's following me. So if I go around, like, you can see like the different angles
so
of the
bizarre.
it's a 2D sprite. This throne of your heart is made of gold and silver. A shadow that represents you currently sits on the throne. Bad grammar. So how you beat the game is you need to get rid of yourself on the throne, because you're not supposed to be on the throne of your life, so to speak. The way of being Christian is Jesus is supposed to be on the throne. So we need to get rid of this asshole. You shoot at the shadow, disappears. Now who will sit on the throne? That's what we're going to use this cross for. Now we put on the throne. Game over.
Oh, yeah. You gotta imagine they have the rights to play this.
And right at the end there, the game crashes. So
Perfect.
now you're looking at a dark screen. Hold on. Let me... 1 second here. Okay, welcome back. That was interesting. The game basically shut down once we beat it. So we finished the game. I just reloaded it to look at this so that you have something to look at while we explain what just happened. So what happens was we put Christ on the throne symbolically by putting the cross on there, which is the correct thing to do. That symbolizes our sort of victory. And then the game was supposed to load an ending sequence, but just like the intro sequence, it doesn't work on the Saints X patch. We're not particularly interested in going to check out the videos. So if you want to do that, you can look it up on your own. They're not that interesting to me. And then there was also some text on the screen that was congratulating us for beating the game. And then it gave us a website to go to and a code to input to prove that we've beaten the game. The developers can congratulate us. So that's what you missed when the game just basically suddenly ended very unceremoniously. Anyway, that's Saints of Virtue.
That wasn't how it's supposed to go?
It wasn't how it's supposed to go. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I can't imagine that website still exists. I would love to go and have them congratulate us. Do you know what happened when you would go there? Or does it just give you like a screen that says congratulations, or
It
like
was like a
they send you an
congratulations,
email?
and you'd like record your names. So here are the names of the people who've beaten the game. And I think they wanted you to only record like if you did challenging difficulty or higher,
Hmm.
which we didn't do because I just didn't want to deal with the game taking longer. It
Yeah,
would just take longer.
for sure.
Um, yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of an interesting idea. I mean,
Mhm.
nowadays, the age of the internet, anybody can just like, hey, here's the code, go put your name. But like back
Yeah.
in the day, that would have been a kind of fun little treat. Um,
Yeah. Well, nowadays you just
yeah,
stream it on Twitch or something, and people could see you beat the game.
yeah, for
Um,
sure. Well, interesting, interesting. My other last thought for the ending there is, we put the cross on the throne. Is that the only choice you have there? Are you able to do anything else? Or is it just
no.
like that's your only way? Because like I wonder for a second, I thought they were gonna go for like, here's your choice: do you sit on the throne or do you put the cross on the throne?
Yeah.
And like, is
Well,
it a good ending, bad ending thing?
considering you were already on the throne to start, the idea is the representation is you on the throne of your life is representing you essentially being your own boss, doing whatever you want, and not being, you know, servant of Christ. And then putting the cross on the throne is symbolic of letting that go and letting Jesus be the
Yeah.
ruler of your life. Yeah. What do you think about that as a symbol of things?
Yeah, well, I mean, just from like a Christian perspective, it tracks, it makes sense. I think the language there is something that can be off-putting, like because we talk about or it talks in the Bible about like being a servant of Christ, right? And like wait a second, what do you mean be a servant? Like um I think there's even like correct me if I'm wrong, isn't there like a verse somewhere that even uses the term like a slave to Christ?
Yeah, Paul
Um
would consider himself a slave to Christ.
yeah, and I mean that language obviously it's not only like charged word, but also like like, are we supposed to be slaves? But the idea, right, from like a theological perspective, is like I'm not bound to my own sinful nature anymore. I'm bound to Christ, who is perfect and who's going to clothe me in righteousness. So, from a theological kind of perspective, you use all these kind of spiritual terms, whatever, biblical terms, and it kind of all
Yeah.
tracks. But I think it's also a message that if you just kind of went to a random person and was like, you should be a servant to Christ, they're going to be like, I don't serve anybody. What do you mean?
Yeah.
But it's a
It
principle. Like
the principle of
you
it. Yeah.
you put off your own um, you know, desire to be the ruler of your life, and you give that um, you know, title, I guess, or you give that like role Jesus because he's now the master of your life is kind of the concept, right?
Yeah, it's a
Um,
concept that definitely like is very sort of colored by the history of, you know, where Christianity was at this time. Like it came up in a society where there were kings, there were emperors, there were rulers. And so, saying Jesus is king had a very different meaning, and it was more immediately apparent what was being talked about, whereas you say it now and it feels very antiquated. Um,
yeah,
so
for
we're
sure.
still using those symbols. Like Christians definitely still use all those symbols because that's just what we've been doing forever. Where they, the words mean different things now, and if you say Jesus is king, people kind of go like, yeah, that makes sense, and then just don't think about it because what is a king? We don't have them.
Yeah, there's a
Um,
lot of words that you kind of just when you use them in a religious context, you just kind of know they mean a different thing in that context than they do just kind of dictionary definition or just used in common conversation.
yeah,
That's how I kind of feel about a lot of the kind of terms you might use to talk about Christian concepts
yeah,
or stuff like that. But yeah, I think overall, I think it's a sensible way to end the game. I don't. You're not gonna
yeah.
like fight a final boss. I feel like if someone made the game these days, you would fight a shadow version of yourself and have to defeat the shadow version of
Which
yourself in
would
order to get
be
to the throne.
awesome,
Would
though.
be awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
uh,
no,
but yeah, it's
I think it's fine
it's
to
fine.
not do
Yeah,
that though. I mean,
yeah,
obviously, it
it
wouldn't be
works.
great in this engine. But even
Yeah,
having like you've already overcome all the challenges. And now the last question, and again, the game doesn't really give you this sort of like dichotomy of like, do you choose correctly here? And I'm not saying it needs to, but like the idea you've come through all these trials and tribulations, and now you're here. All that's left is to give up the throne of your heart and give it to Jesus. I think it's a fine way to end it. without like a big climactic confrontation. I think it's
Yeah.
a interesting choice.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, it definitely feels like one of those things I've mentioned multiple times where the developers need to make a certain point, but with the materials they're given to make that point, it's really difficult to make one that isn't either very heavy-handed or overly simplistic, because it definitely is one of those things that, someone who's been in Christianity for decades and decades would look at it and go like, "Wow, that's a rather simplified way of looking at it." But it's not wholly incorrect. Like, I look at this and go, wow, if only it were that easy. Because
Sure.
in reality, what tends to happen is, if you are the type of person who views the world in the way of like you have a throne room, so to speak, and someone's got to sit on that throne, is it going to be you or is it going to be God? It isn't a one-time choice that you make the choice at one point, and once the choice is made, it's done. You say, I believe in Jesus, and now you're done, and everything is fine. It tends to be a choice you have to make every single day, over and
Yeah.
over and over again, which this game is not equipped to deal with. And I don't mean that in a sense that the developers weren't unable to in their heads, as much as the engine, the story of the game, the purpose of it is really not equipped to handle that type of question. It's just making a very simplified form of like, hey, in the grand scheme of things, it's either you running the show or it's God running the show.
Yeah, and that's fine. I don't think
Yeah.
it needs to be, unpacked to the nth degree. It's
Yeah,
kind of
that would be
presenting the
a different
it's
game.
presenting the framework, right? It's
Yeah.
presenting the basic concepts, and like your mileage may vary.
Yeah, and the game wasn't designed to be Christian education, according to the developers. Like they wanted to make sure it contained Christian messaging within it because they saw this as a way of creating a game that featured a worldview and went to a market and et cetera, of something they didn't see in the world yet. So like they were looking at games and go like, why isn't there a game that explores Christianity but isn't, you know, Bible adventures for the NES? You know what I mean? They were looking at it
Yeah,
that way. And so they wanted it to just be a good time, but featuring Christian messaging. So they don't really care if someone plays this game and gets saved or not. That's really not why they're making the game. Um,
yeah. I would
yeah,
say it's hard to play it and not see it as kind of a Christian teaching like vehicle, because it's got
true.
the scriptures as like a very
Yeah,
integral part of like hey, you progress through the game by you
yeah.
know using the scripture to combat the
Yes, I would
the
agree with
worldly
you there.
wisdom, but it's not like over the top like bashing it into your brain. It's again, with the exception of the scriptures themselves being things you use to as keys essentially, and then occasional bits of dialogue, there actually isn't that much constant like throwing stuff in your face. Like here's a teaching moment. You're just kind of wandering the levels, and
Yeah,
the concepts are a backdrop for what you're doing, but it's not over the top in your face all the time.
yeah, I do appreciate that because it's something that tends to happen a lot with the Christian media that we know of when we say Christian media. Sort of the empire of Christian media, the pure flicks version of Christian media, which is first and foremost preaching. And
Yeah,
mostly preaching to the choir, the idea of making sure that Christians are the ones watching this and we're telling the Christians what they want to hear about XYZ. Whereas this
yeah.
game is still designed, I think it's meant for Christians to play, although the developers are perfectly happy with anyone playing it. But it's not meant as we are making a game for atheists to play and then come to Christ. That is not at all what they
Yeah.
want to do.
Like I think if
Yeah.
you were to like show this to somebody who doesn't really have any personal faith or ties to Christian faith or even like didn't grow up that in
Yeah.
that culture or whatever, I don't think they would probably be like, okay, this isn't really for me.
Yeah.
I don't think they would be like, don't shove your preaching dogma down my throat because like if they actually played the game, they would see it's kind of benign. Like it's not
Yeah. It's not really.
particularly it's not overly judgy or condemning. Like you might say
Yeah.
some of the
There's a
scripture
couple.
choices can be,
Yeah.
like okay, well, interesting. Like, but for the most part, it's pretty. It's just a game that has Christian elements, and I think that's pretty low key.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that's a good thing because like in, you know, a world where media in an attempt to reach the widest audience possible, waters down whatever message it has until it's the worst thing you've ever seen in your life. It's nice to play games, watch movies, read books, whatever, that do come from a very specific worldview and don't hide it. And so, whether or not you agree with that one, like this one here is from a Christian worldview, which is not exactly an underrepresented worldview at all. But in video games, I would say it is, because any game that um, even approaches a message that is close to something Christian is not going to be explicitly Christian. So it's nice to say, well, why not do this thing that's explicitly Christian? There are other games I know that will approach things from different religions explicitly, but again, they're very few and far between. And I think there should be more of them. So I'm not just saying like there should be more explicitly Christian games. There should be more explicitly Jewish, Muslim, um, Buddhist, whatever. There needs to be more of those because these are ways we can represent more demographics. More people can see themselves in the game. Whereas any game that approaches any questions of like religion or morality really try hard not to present any one view as a correct one. Or if they do want to present a correct view, they're trying to make it sound like the neutral, not so much atheist as much as just um, disinterested in religion as the best possible viewpoint, because it seems like the one that will offend the least people. Um,
Yeah,
so,
like you were
yeah,
saying, trying to appeal to a wider audience, you kind of strip away anything that might be tied to a particular,
yeah,
um, you know, group or culture or not. I don't know, not culture, but like I think ultimately any work of art or media is more powerful when the influences of the creator and the influences um, on the creation of that art come through.
yeah,
And I think the more kind of poignant that is, the more um, potent that is, the better the art. Even if you don't agree with the message itself, you find it interesting because you're getting a perspective that is like really clearly coming from a place of real weight and meaning, and not just like how can we make something that appeals to people
yeah.
without anything really underneath it.
Yeah, and even with that, like I wouldn't say this game is necessarily an insight to the developers' minds specifically. Like this is how Mike and Dave think about the world. Um, it's a little bit more boilerplate evangelical Christianity from the '90s. However, um, that in itself reflects the creators themselves, and so in a way, this art is personal. Like I don't know the creators personally. If I met them, on the train, I wouldn't know it was them necessarily, unless I've seen pictures of them, know what they look like. Um, but there's the sense of getting to know them through the art in a way that larger projects that tend to water down their messages don't have, because they have no thumbprints on them of who's making them. They have no sort of worldview outside of um, the most basic sort of treacly messaging, which even then has messaging, because like it's impossible not to create art that has a message in some way. And so in a sense, by these guys making Saints of Virtue, which has a very particular worldview that they don't try to hide, it's just honesty, because a lot of games will present morality or whatever theology that is in fact similar to, if not the same as, 90s conservative evangelicals, but because they're trying very hard not to appear that way, then it just kind of ends up with this generic mess. But by making a game that's specifically supposed to be a Christian game, it allows the developers to just acknowledge this and be honest and upfront, be like, we are presenting our world. And you can engage with that a little bit more freely because you know what you're getting into, rather than a game that's advertising itself as a bland whatever, and you get in and it's like, oh, it's just repackaged Christianity, because that happens a lot.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, ultimately, I think it was a fun playthrough. I think it was fun to go
yeah,
back and again, for me, I hadn't watched any of this again since the last time I played this as a kid. So
yeah,
getting to kind of walk through it all again, it was fun to sort of reminisce about how this impacted me as a kid. And by impacted, even just like the way, I don't mean like it was a life changing game. I just mean like, how did I feel playing it, and what was my reaction then? It was fun to kind of reminisce about like, oh yeah, I remember like there were some oddities of the game that we didn't know at the time But now that you're explaining it, like yeah, like all
Yeah.
the things about the game that felt really weird were because of that frame rate issue. So like we were
Hmm.
stuck at certain points and we're like, how do we progress this game? And
Yeah.
we would find workarounds that definitely felt like they weren't the intended route, but it was the only way to win. And kind of fun to get the insight that that was
Yeah.
because of the technical issues or I guess the way it was coded. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah. Agreed with that sense of like going back and seeing, oh yeah, this game. And I'm more surprised at how much the developers did right than what they did wrong. Because it's really easy to point out the wrong stuff, and I did a lot because like I don't want to pretend it's not there. I'm not gonna, but like it's two guys who had no real video game experience before then. As far as I know, they might have tinkered around, but they hadn't released any games. They didn't work for any companies before then, and their only experience was essentially their own desire to do so. And for what it's worth, they created something remarkable for given all of that so lack of experience. Like there's a lot of stuff that did go right. Like the game holds together in a sense. Like it's possible to play through the game and figure out what to do. It's not entirely opaque. There's a couple moments that are tricky and some things I'd go like, man, if I were designing this, I wouldn't have made that choice because it's, most players aren't going to figure that out so much. But there's never a point at which you're like, well, the game's broken. The only reason
Yeah.
it's broken is because computers got more and more powerful and the game just wasn't able to keep up. But ultimately, like, the game works. They made a thing. They should be proud of it. And I genuinely believe the world is a better place for them having made it. Like, when people make art from the heart, that's always a good thing.
And even just on a personal level, like this game has given us something to hang out and chat over, and
Yeah.
that's a thing that it has value. Something that you can have a shared experience, and you can, have a dialogue about it. And we had a good time just kind of hanging out and playing it. And so even just for that alone, I think it's been a positive thing.
Yeah. Like, there's definitely a lot of positive experiences from it. There's some other people on YouTube I've looked at seeing looking at this game. I think I've mentioned over the course of this playthrough, but I'll say again. So one of them is Decaying Reverie, I believe I mentioned, and it was I just had a moment I forgot the YouTuber name. So if that wasn't the name of the YouTuber, whoops. But I'll probably put links down in there. Anyway, Decaying Reverie I think just has like the ultimate video essay on this game. Unless I make one, in which case that would be the ultimate because everything I say is the best. Um, but
Mhm.
there's a great. I've not saved the game for a while. I may want to do so. Oh crap! I should save the game.
I love that that shows up on the title screen. That's funny.
Whoops. But anyway, like there's a video essay because that YouTuber has a playthrough, um, but it's a no commentary. They just kind of walk through the game, which is fine. This is a commentary playthrough and not much of a walkthrough, although I do explain how to do everything because we're kind of riffing a lot. Um, and but he does walkthrough and then a video essay like it's 2 hours long, going over the whole game and thoughts about it. And what I like about it is he's approaching it respectfully because there is at least one other video essay out there for this game. There's not very many in total, but there was one I saw that I had to turn off 2 minutes in because it was clear that the guy making the essay just wanted something to dump on. So I was looking for a game that was super great and mocking the developers as being part of like the essentially trash media where we just want to make this Christian knockoff of a game to make a quick buck. And it's like it's clear this person didn't even research what the game was and everything they said about it I couldn't get through it because it was like everything you're saying is wrong. You didn't bother to research what you're saying. You just saw a thing for 8 seconds and just in your head invented a story about why the game looks like this and just ran with it. So it's nice to see a YouTuber take the game seriously. um, and there was another one. I don't remember the YouTube. I have to look up the stuff again. Either I'll put it in the links or I'll say you're all big boys and girls out there. You can find it yourself. Another YouTuber who talks about the game. Um, Whereas Decaying Reverie is Christian, talking about the game from that perspective. This other YouTuber who does a good job, whose name I forget, is non Christian, but also approaches the game, treating it like a real piece of art to be discussed rather than something to point at and laugh. And this YouTuber actually got an interview with one of the developers, which I can't see because I did not give to his Patreon. Uh, So, but he did that. So it's
Wow.
like a real amount of effort went into studying this game. But there's not much info out there about it. It really is obscure.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that makes it kind of a fun little gem of a playthrough. Is like, well, this isn't something that's been covered to death.
Yeah.
Like, not that this is going to be the seminal work on this, on this
Yeah.
game, but having something to talk about, like, you can't really, there's some games that have been covered so much. What are you going to say? Why even make a video? But this is one where it's kind of
Yeah.
fun to
Yeah, I'm not
hey,
making it for the
say something about it.
views. I mean, honestly, like this channel that I've started, I did it just because I wanted a place to put video game playthroughs. I like video games. Not really doing it for views. If I never ever get subscribers or views, I'm not really going to be that upset. Um, although I won't be upset if I do get subscribers and views. But like that's not what it's for. I'm not chasing the algorithm here. This is a game that I'm personally invested in as you are as well, because we both played it as kids, and I really enjoyed playing this with you. I enjoyed being able to chat with you. It was fun because like now that we live 8,000 miles away from each other, we don't get as many opportunities, um,
Yeah.
and just kind of get to riff while we play a game together and sort of revisit this nostalgia for this crazy time where games looked like this.
They all looked like this,
Yeah,
all of them.
yeah. I mean, there were a
Yeah,
lot that
but
looked like this.
we've been yapping for a while, so I don't know if there's anything else you want to touch on before we
There's not
wrap up.
really,
But
not unless we think about later, like, oh, we should do a big video essay on the Christian messaging of this. But we kind of covered it in the videos in a way. So like, unless I go back through the footage and go, I really want to talk about how the messaging is done in the game, or other aesthetic points like how's the level design or things like that. We've pretty much covered
yeah,
everything. So yeah, first things first, I want to say thank you to uh, the millions and millions of you who are watching this now. Thank you so much for watching. I mean, we've had fun. I hope that you had some kind of fun watching these videos and you got to see a little bit of some lost media, so to speak. And if you want to see this game for yourself, try it out. See what all the hype is about. Why is everyone talking about Saints of Virtue? I'm going to put
yeah,
links in all these videos to the Saints X patch or the website where you can get that. You do need to have a copy of the game itself, which is easy to do. It's easy to find, but the patch only works if you have the game. And there should be a link to that as well. There's also a YouTuber who has uploaded all of the sound, well, really the music assets for the game, because I've cut them all out of this video series because it would just drive me nuts. I just knew it would drive me nuts, so I turned off the music. But you can hear it for yourself and decide how much you like it. And keep in mind that the 10-second loop is in fact a 10-second loop, and the whole 20 minutes of the level would be that loop. But there's a personal link who has uploaded all of those. I still haven't decided at the time of this recording whether I will upload music of my own into the videos, but if you're hearing a soundtrack while we played the game, I wrote it. But that's a lot of work for me. So if you didn't hear a soundtrack while we played the game, I decided that I had better things to do than write a soundtrack for this game. So there is that. But if you are curious, the assets are available as well. It's possible to find and download all the assets of the game so you can get the music and the graphics for yourself if you want to see what this thing is made of. I think
cool.
that's all. I don't really need to plug too much because this channel is not super great. My main channel is mostly for music stuff. I make weird music for freaks, so if you like that, join my channel. And Empfindsamer here is a visual artist. In fact, creates a lot of the covers I use for the songs I make, and some of their own stuff is also amazing. So if you are watching this going, how can I contribute to the success of these two fine specimens? That's how you can do so. We'll be putting links in there because we got to rep our merch. You got to make that sweet, sweet, sweet YouTube money. I think that's all for that. Do you have any parting thoughts for us, Empfindsamer?
I think that's just about it.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I'm glad we did this, and I hope we find something else that we can keep this thing going, do something like this again sometime.
Yeah, whoever out there makes Saints of Virtue 2 will be on that.
Yeah, waiting for it to drop.
Yeah. That would be an interesting one. Okie dokie. Well, then, this has been great. We'll say now goodbye to everyone, and you have a nice life.
Ciao.